We have another no-cut event coming up this week in PGA DFS, so we can all be thankful for that as we begin our Tuesdays for today, taking a look at the ZOZO Championship from a PGA DFS perspective over in Japan. 78 golfers in the field. There is no cut. There will be much rejoicing. We're going to break things down from a DFS perspective and let you know who we are targeting for this week. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, joined here as always by Brandon Gadula. He is the managing editor for numberFire.com. Brandon, we're heading to Japan this week. How are you doing today?
Good. This field is maybe less good. We got some good names at the top, and then five. I'd say Morikawa, Xander, Hideki, Zalatoris, Neiman. They're all their top tier, but according to the FanDuel Sportsbook odds, it's Colin Morikawa and Xander, and then everyone else can just go take a hike.
Maybe they will. You know, a lot of people have. A lot of people have already withdrawn from this event, so maybe that's why they're like, oh man, it's Xander's in this field. Toast. See you guys. Pack my bags. Go tour Japan while I'm here. Instead of playing some golf. Can't blame them.
Well, I don't know if everyone traveled and then I don't know how.
I would have to assume they took the full flight and then decided to withdraw. I think that'd be the more logical way to play things.
Yeah, I mean, Japan's probably got some sweet hiking, but
I was supposed to be there this year, and then a pandemic happened, and so I am sad about that and very jealous of the people who decided to go to this golf event instead.
Yeah, I also am usually pretty jealous of pro golfers because I'm not a pro level golfer. As I reminded myself again yesterday, I'm not quite there.
Yep. I've not been out in a very long time, so that would not go well. I'm jealous of you for going. So we are several deviations from being Xander Schauffele and Colin Morikawa for this week. Now, as mentioned, the ZOZO Championship is a no-cut event. It is at Accordia Golf Narashino Country Club. It is 7,041 yards. In a par 70, there are 78 golfers in the field. Once again, there is no cut. With this event being in Asia, there will be an early lock. Lock is on Wednesday night, so not Thursday morning. So if you are like me and tend to procrastinate, don't do that. Make sure you have those done by Wednesday afternoon. Actually, it might be...
It says noon.
Yeah.
12 p.m. Eastern.
I think that's incorrect because I believe Japan is about 12 hours behind us.
I was going to say, that sounds
weird. That'd be about midnight.
But
so I would guess it's closer to like 6.
I at least want to say I'm seeing a FanDuel contest that lists lock at 12 p.m.
It always
Eastern.
lists at 7 o'clock a.m. Eastern for the Thursday lock event, so I'm pretty sure they just change it once tee times are out. I'm pretty sure it's wrong. I'm just saying.
Yes. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it'll be around 6 o'clock on Wednesday. If I had to guess.
I'm with you.
Just saying.
Yeah.
So get those lineups set Wednesday afternoon. Get them finalized by then. This is mostly a reminder to me because I will forget and need to now do that in order to give myself a chance in the bobble hat against you. So, Brandon, they have played at Narashino Country Club before. They played it back in the year 2019, the PGA Tour season 2020. Yeah. What did we learn there with no shot link data and a lot of other unknowns in that event?
I mean, some stuff, not a lot. With no shot link, it's really impossible to figure out exactly what led to certain things. But Tiger Woods was the winner at 19 under. In total, 9 golfers finished at least 10 under par. And as is typical, we see golfers effectively miss the cut in a no-cut event. That's how it works, especially with the bottom of this field being really weak. 30 of the 76 golfers back in 2019 were over par. So please don't just play Xander, Morikawa, Hideki, and then click 3 names down in the 7,000 range. It's not a long-term winning strategy. I don't even know if that's enough salary there, but 81, that's fine. I've actually never really just clicked the top 3 names and saw what happened. I assumed it was pretty bad, but not that bad. 81, 33. I mean, maybe Brandon Hagee down there. Wyndham Clark if we're going to go for distance, because that's the one thing we know about this course. How about that for a transition?
There you go.
There you go.
Bro, why am I here? You can take my spot.
Well, it's the pod goes a lot better when it's not a solo pod, which I had plenty of experience with this year. But there's a mix of long and short holes if you compare them to the average PGA Tour hole of the same par. There are 4 short holes. 2 of them are short par 4s, the other 2 being short par 3s. And there are 5 holes that I would consider notably long. They come in the form of par 4s that are at least 486 yards. It's about 50 yards longer than the PGA Tour average. And if you look at Data Golf and their course fit tool, shows an emphasis on driving distance. It makes sense based on the hole-by-hole breakdown, which is something I'm looking at more and more, although it's really hard ever to look at a layout and say distance is bad or that distance won't help. But for the most part, we're looking at driving distance being a key stat along with strokes gained approach. And then from there, 19 under, pretty sure it was Tiger at 19 under, then Hideki at 16 under, and then a tie at 13 under. So, not 20. It's not what we saw at the CJ Cup where everyone was
under par.
Everyone was, yeah. I think 3 holes played over par. It was nuts. I find that golf really boring, but it's not going to be like that. But there's still going to be birdie opportunities. We're going to want scoring. So birdie or better 8. And then I'm going to factor in putting, but I don't know what the greens are. I will say the greens at Kasuma Gaseki in Japan for the Olympics were bent grass. But I know that when I was looking into that, they're different types. So I don't want to assume it's bent grass, but there's not a whole lot of info there. So again, my key stats are driving distance, strokes gained approach, birdie or better rate, and strokes gained putting.
So looking at Data Golf's course fit tool, the distance thing stands out a lot there. It also stands out when you look at it in terms of who finished well there, because if you look at the top 10 finishers from 2019, I'll just say what year it occurred.
Yeah.
2019, the top 10 finishers, every single one of them ranked in the top 84 in distance for the PGA Tour that season. And there were 6 guys in the top 10 ranked outside the top 100 in driving accuracy. The median ranking for distance was 49th. Median ranking for accuracy is 105th. And good drives gained good driver was also 107. So a very clear lean towards distance, despite the fact it's not a super long course overall in terms of aggregate distance. It is one that does emphasize distance. So I'm on the same stats here where I want to go for distance. Do you want to look at approach, birdies are better gained, and putting? Seems like a pretty straightforward event here.
Yeah, and if anyone's been listening to the NFL show, Jim and I made a tweak where we can recommend the same players. Historically, we would avoid that. We would historically avoid that for the PGA podcast as well. We decided we decided to give it a shot where we could have overlap because it makes sense if we both rank someone first.
Right.
We should probably talk about them. Now, if we have overlap, which we do, we'll recommend some pivots. But, I just wanted to say we're on the same stats. We're on a lot of the same plays. So
the top 3 are all the same.
It was yeah, because I got to the sheet second, and I was like, well, we said we would give this a shot. A reason.
So it's a 78 golfer field. If we talk up 12 different dudes, that's kind of a lot. So that was the reasoning behind allowing there to be overlap. And I think we should be going forward to, not just for a smaller field, but the pool of golfers I'd realistically consider this week is not that large. Yeah. So having 12 guys we talk up as being loves is ridiculous to me. So I'm fine with the overlap. I think that's the right way to have things here. Yeah.
And we've got 14 or 15 guys who play primarily on, I guess I can never remember the name. I think it's got a specific name, but
it starts with a K, I believe, but not
either way. Those guys and great time. It's always great to use Data Golf, but they have a true strokes gain query. If you go there, you can get those adjusted numbers to try to see what their performance on different tours equates to on the PGA Tour, basically. And those guys are like all the Japanese players here who are
From the JGTO, the Japan Golf Tour Organization.
Okay, I must have been thinking of the Sunshine Tour, but either way, I think that's either way. It's 78 golfers, but it's really 60.
It's a lot like a major, where like a lot of the guys you're
It's
not
like the
gonna consider.
Masters.
Yeah, exactly. Where a lot of the golfers are not dudes you want to consider. Therefore, like the consideration set's smaller. The Masters is not a no-cut event, but it kind of plays like one from a DFS perspective. So it's very similar in that sense.
Yeah, and it's just the way that it works this week. And yes, there's still tons of volatility in a no-cut event. It does get lessened just because you give someone like Xander or Morikawa or Hideki 4 rounds to get things right. Let's say one of those guys misses the cut. If this was a cut event, it's going to help the weaker golfers stay on top, but that's not going to really work this week. So, it's going to be a bit of a boring week. The one key is going to be whether you try to get 2 to 3 of the top sort of 5, or if you go a little bit more balanced so that you avoid the value plays in general. I think that's just kind of the main conversation for the week.
And it is a conversation we will have in just 1 second. But first, basketball is back tonight, and FanDuel's free over-under contest is back too. It's simple. Just head over to FanDuel.com/over-under and choose either over or under for each listed prop. Sounds easy. You can make free picks for a chance to win a share of $5,000. All you got to do to make your picks, go to FanDuel before every NBA on TNT broadcast for your shot at a big payday. Eligibility restrictions apply. Go over to FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app for more details. Now, of course, because they've been here just once to Narashino Country Club, we don't have a lot of course data to look at, but there were some golfers who were here back in 2019. Brandon, who were some of the guys who were here then who performed well?
Hideki was runner-up. Sungjae was third, but he withdrew. Paul Casey was 17th and he withdrew, so 2 big withdrawals there. But so Hideki was runner-up. Ryan Palmer and Xander finished 10th. Keegan Bradley was 13th. Sung Kang was 17th. Colin Morikawa, Tommy Fleetwood, and Adam Schenk were 22nd. Emiliano Grillo, every time. We always thought it was Grillo, and then I changed it to Grillo, and then it was Grillo. So sorry, Emiliano. I know you're a big fan of the pod, but I'm trying. Troy Merritt was 30th. Joaquin Niemann, 33rd. Those are the guys who finished top 35 here.
And Morikawa did that in his age 12 season. So big for him to finish 22nd there. Do you care much? Because obviously course familiarity is nice, but it was a couple years ago now. A lot of the guys here are younger, so they are maybe in a different spot in their career now than they were then. But again, familiarity does help. So how much do you care whether or not a guy was here in 2019?
Honestly, I would bump it up from a sense of I don't care how they did if they played here. That's helpful. Especially because I don't know, probably not. But let's say Hideki got runner up because he putted really well. That's not going to happen. But I don't know how guys fared in different things because we don't have shot link data. But I would say a slight bump to everyone who played here. But I don't care if you haven't played here because we've seen guys debut at courses and finish well. It's just plus I would say honestly, Hideki, Xander, Palmer, maybe Keegan, Morikawa, Fleetwood, Niemann, the other guys who finished well, I'm not going to care about.
Right.
I'm not bumping up Sean Norris because he played here.
Sounds good. Let's
well, actually, I think he might be on the Japanese tour.
Yeah. I think that the overall takeaway is it's okay to bump guys up a bit because they were here, but I would not bump them down because they didn't perform well. And I also would not cross people off who have not been here. I think that's the key takeaway for that. So let's dive into current form, talk about golfers with noteworthy form. I'm saying that way intentionally because of some of the guys I'll be talking about in my section. You've got Will Zalatoris first, looking at his form. What do you see with him?
So you and I are selling out for distance. I would assume that's kind of the way that everyone goes, just because that's the one stat we can kind of cling to and feel decent about. And we know that Zalatoris has that. He is just consistently gaining distance on the field in all the fields he plays in. He has gained distance on the field in 16 straight events, according to Fantasy National, and in 42 of 45 measured events in his PGA Tour career. When it's been negative, it's basically been like negligible. So we know that he's long. We know that he's going to pick up distance, and that's a key stat for this week. But, you know, coming off a missed cut with neutral tee to green numbers, lost 2.4 strokes putting. That's not really what you want to see. However, prior to that, he had finished 8th at the WGC FedEx St. Jude, 29th at the Wyndham, 11th at the Fortinet, and 14th at the Sanderson Farms, mostly because this is Will Zalatoris' game from good ball striking. And here's the thing with Will. We know the putter is iffy. We've seen him, I don't want to say the yips, but we've seen him kind of not be able to convert 2-footers, looking like me out there on the greens from tap-in range. But he has gained at least 2.6 strokes putting in 3 of his past 5. So he is shaping up to be a very volatile putter. Volatility isn't always bad if it can come with some semblance of positive volatility. Now, he's not gaining 7-8 strokes putting, but 2 to 4 can get you there if you can lead the field in tee to green, which he definitely can. So, we got to figure out how we're handling the top golfers this week. I think Zalatoris does plenty to be in the conversation. I just don't know if he's going to be someone I can prioritize. So, what are your thoughts on Will Z for the week?
So with regards to volatility, I would say volatility is actively good if it means you've got upside. Like I'd rather have, I don't know if I'd rather have someone like Zalatoris who can gain 2.5 or lose 2.5, but then someone who's like always at 0. But I think I might, just because I need someone to the path to upside, and it's hard to like win an event with 0 strokes gained putting. So I actually think that volatility is an active positive if you have upside, and he does, it seems like. It could just be that he's grouped together some good events. That's very possible. But I mean, like if it's within his range of outcomes, I'll take it. So I think that from that perspective, I'm good with him. The concern that I have is I can get good distance and more dependability elsewhere, both above and below him from a salary perspective. Like Xander's long off the tee, Niemann's long off the tee, and those guys kind of sandwich him from a salary perspective. So I think that Zalatoris is above a couple guys in this range, but I'm not going to put him above Niemann, not going to put him above Xander, not going to put him above Morikawa, despite the fact Morikawa is not as good of a course fit as Zalatoris. He's just a better golfer. So I think that's where I'm at right now. I'm not out on him, and I wouldn't mind if I got to him. I would just need to be comfortable with my exposure levels to Niemann and Schauffele before I decided to get to Zalatoris.
Yeah, I think the thing is, you and I are going to be talking up Niemann and Xander all podcast. We have Colin Morikawa as at the time. He opened as the betting favorite. He's now co-favorites with Xander at plus 650. And my research shows that the highest salaried golfer and the favorite, almost always the most popular golfer in the field. So I think between Morikawa, Xander, and Niemann, it's a very clear top trio that will emerge as like the chalk. So where I am with Zalatoris is I'm not going to recommend him as my favorite process play. But if I'm really building lineups and factoring in game theory, he would be someone that I would say, you know what, I love Xander most. If he's going to be on 40 to 45% of lineups because it's a small field and Zalatoris will be on 25%, it's close enough where I'd be good with Zalatoris. So that's not the case for everyone up in this salary range. Correct. I don't know if you have any examples, though.
Maybe. Let's talk about Ricky Fowler, who is up in the salary range. He's 11-2. He was someone I was kind of referencing when I was talking about Zalatoris, like saying I'm not going to put him below everyone in this range. But
I got it.
Let's talk about Ricky. Ricky is 20-1 this week. Actually, that may have shifted. Ricky is, where is he now? 28. Okay, so he's lengthened a lot. Everyone's lengthened, but he lengthened a lot. That's appropriate is what I would say. Ricky is coming off a 3rd place finish last week. Did that by just beasting off the tee. He actually gained 5.5 strokes off the tee. That is his highest mark there since July of 2019. He lost 1.3 on the greens, which makes a third place finish pretty impressive. The problem is that he wasn't doing that before this. Fowler had lost strokes tee to green in 4 of his previous 5 measured events. And I think that when you combine that with the third place finish last week, combine that with the name value, combine that with this being a pretty underwhelming field, I feel like Fowler is the easiest fade in the field at 11-2, despite the good finish last week. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's promising to see what he did last week because it wasn't fueled with the putting.
Mhm.
Although if you really look, the putting hasn't always been what you would expect from Ricky. I
Not
mean,
as
I
good as
know
reputation.
what's that?
Not as good as reputation.
Yeah, like the assumption is basically that he just is a fantastic putter, which historically he has been, but the recent finishes haven't really been from putting always. He actually led the field pretty comfortably in strokes gained tee to green last week, and it's a good field. That is the most promising thing I could see for Ricky Fowler. But I know enough to know that one event of outlierishly good tee to green play is not enough to say, hey, this is who he is now. The distance was good. The distance seems to be like maybe it's getting a little bit better. So I don't know if there's something he's working on from that perspective. But um, I don't think that it's a week to play Ricky Fowler, especially if he will be popular after what he did last week.
And that is my assumption, is that he will be, because we love Ricky. We root for Ricky. But like, from a DFS perspective, there are enough red flags here where I will avoid, especially because we got Zalatoris, we got Neiman, got Xander all around him, and I like Cam Tringali more than Fowler. Tringali isn't super long, but I think the rest of his game is really solid, so I like him as well. I think that makes it pretty easy to gloss over Ricky for this week. Let's move to your second golfer. Kyung-Hoon Lee is $9,200. His betting odds pretty short relative to his salary, and that could get interest. So what do you see with KH Lee recently, and can we trust what the betting odds are saying about him?
Well, it seems like a lot of people are trusting KH Lee. He is solo second in tags on fansharesports.com behind. Well, he's got, it's early, so he's got 8 tags. Only one other golfer has more than 5, and it's actually the guy you're about to talk about. So, current form might lead to some popularity stuff, but yeah, Lee is entering with a lot of good, like, high end finishes. 25th at the CJ Cup, 14th at the Shriners. Did miss the cut at the Sanderson Farms when the putter just got away from him, but he was also 12th at the BMW Championship, 24th at the Wyndham, 6th at the 3M Open. In total, that's 5 top 5 finishes in his last 8 starts, so that works. Lee is in the 78th percentile in my adjusted tee to green data. He is about baseline in terms of birdie rate and distance gained. So lots of top 25s, passable with distance and birdie numbers. I see the case for Lee, but so does everyone else. So where are you with him?
I mean, I think that he'd be fine if he weren't popular. Like, I'd be okay with him at 92. Like, he wouldn't be a standout at 92.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I'd be fine with him. But then if you add in popularity to a guy with whom I'm fine, that makes him pretty easy to avoid. And also, like, that's not a bad range. I think it does fall off pretty quickly after him. Like, the 93, 94 area is pretty good. It gets bad after that. So I think I've got good pivots. I have reason to be concerned about him still. I think that makes it where he's probably someone where I don't need to get there for this week.
Yeah, honestly, he didn't pop for me until I was looking into guys with the best current form to talk about. Or not, it's not always best, but with
Noteworthy.
Ricky, but like, yeah. And I was like, oh, this makes sense. And then seeing the popularity projections, well, they're not specifically projections, but lots of buzz around him. You don't love to see that whenever you're trying to find some ways to be a little bit different. So
Right.
for me, I'm probably going to pass on Lee because there are plenty of other names in that range to go to.
And we'll talk about those in the tier by tier breakdown later on. But for now, let's finish up the current form section by talking about CT Pond, a guy you mentioned is getting some buzz right now as well. Not the longest guy at the tee, which could be a downside here, but he's been golfing decently well recently. Pond has had 2 events since the start of the new PGA Tour season. He's finished top 12 in both. Got there in part based on putting, but the approach play was good too, which is encouraging. He gained 4.6 there at the Fortinet and 3.1 at the Sanderson Farms. And the approach play was starting to trend up over the summer as well. He now ranks 14th in approach over the past 50 rounds. The problem is that he's flawed. Specifically, the distance is kind of concerning. He's $9,700. Sounds like he might be popular. Are you willing to take swipes at Pond in that range?
So I don't dislike him specifically, but there's enough with the current form. And it just hit me that he finished with the bronze medal at Kasumigaseki. And I feel like there's probably some, Japanese golf bump there from like a perception perspective. So, and Xander should have that too as the gold medalist because he's the GOAT. But I think for me, the field drops off in the low 9,000s. I have plenty of other options at around 97 where he is. So, I honestly don't care what the profile is. If I have, we talk about when it's okay, like when it's better to fade popular plays, it's whenever there are viable alternatives. And I would rather play Jonathan Vegas for an extra 100 in salary. I would rather bump down to Chris Kirk or Lonto Griffin. So I'm not going to chase it. So that's probably where I am.
I'd agree with that. I'm very much okay with not getting there, specifically because of Vegas. Like you mentioned, I think that he is the most logical guy in this tier, but also there are some guys around 10,000 who I like more, like Charlie Hoffman I like more. Carlos Ortiz I like more. They're both right there. Or I could jump down to the other guys too. So pretty easy for me to not get there this week. Let's take a look at what the bookmakers are saying here. As you alluded to, Colin Morikawa and Xander Schauffele, the co-favorites here, the 2 standouts. They're both plus 650 at FanDuel Sportsbook. Nobody else shorter than 12-1, which is where you find Hideki Matsuyama. Will Zalatoris is 17-1. Joaquin Neiman is 20-1, with Tommy Fleetwood at 22-1. Ricky, as mentioned, is lengthened to 28-1. And there's another teardrop from Fowler down to Johnny Vegas at 33-1. Got Alex Noren, Cameron Tringali, Siwoo Kim, and Maverick McNeely rounding out the top group at 35-1. So let's talk about Xander and Morikawa here, because I think they're the 2 obvious ones here. How are you handling those 2 guys? And how are you handling things after them this week?
I am playing Xander. I am not going to play Morikawa simply for the fact of hoping for some variance. He is not as good long-term as Xander, and he's higher salaried by just a tinge with $100. He opened as the favorite. I would presume he has plenty of popularity on him, similar to Xander. But for me, Xander rates out a lot more likely to win this thing than Morikawa, which those are probably 2 of the poster boys of converting wins and deserving wins. Like, I'm not saying Morikawa doesn't deserve his wins, but he converts them. Xander's good enough to win them, but just hasn't. So I think they're a clear cut above everyone else. I'm going to play Xander. I'm probably just going to avoid Morikawa and hope that he's 15th or 20th, and just so I see the case for both. I always see the case for Colin Morikawa despite any concerns, but we went distance. That's not really Morikawa's game.
Yeah, I think I'm actually a little bit different here because I have Xander first, but I feel like because the teardrop from them to the rest of the field is so large, I will have one of them in each lineup because it's really hard for me to fill out a lineup I feel good about without them in it. I know that from an odds perspective, the odds that the perfect lineup doesn't have either of them in it is decently high just because golf is a weird, volatile sport.
Yeah.
I still feel like given the gap between them in the field, I'd like to have one of them in each. It likely will be where I wind up being underweight on Morikawa because I'll be heavier on Xander and I'd bet Morikawa is around 40% or so. So I probably won't be at 40, but I think a 70-30 split favoring Xander is most likely where I'll wind up.
Yeah, I think if I was going to do that, I would need to do my thing and just leave 100 in salary and just duplicate the lineup and then swap
Yeah.
out Xander to get to Morikawa because you can say, hey, look, I believe one of these two guys is just going to win or is a lock for a top 5. I don't necessarily know which one. Again, you can still make a lineup work with both. And I think that might very well be my approach in our head to head. But if we're talking tournaments, because you can roster both, I think that'll be a very popular combo. So I would try to pare down my exposure. I think the overall point is that we like both. We're higher on Xander, and we're probably going to be lower on Morikawa than consensus.
I think that's most likely the correct way to phrase it. So let's look at the way the odds have shifted since things opened. Everyone pretty much lengthened. But what has been the most noteworthy movement you've seen based on the odds of FanDuel Sportsbook?
Yeah, so I'm just going to look at guys whose odds have shortened. I think that just makes the most sense. Hideki from 14 to 12 from Monday morning into Tuesday morning. Will Zalatoris 18 to 17, which is small, but he's going kind of against the stream. Neiman from 22 to 20. Jonathan Vegas 41 to 33. Emiliano Grillo 41 to 36. KH Lee 50 to 41. Some small movement for Troy Merritt and Tom Hoagie from 100 to 95. Sung Kang 120 to 95. And Brandon Hagee, who's kind of my boy this week, 120 to 100.
Okay, so positive movement for your guy. Got to make you feel good about that. We'll talk about Hagee in the tier by tier breakdown as well. Before that, though, let's talk about some weather for this weekend. There's a chance of rain Friday afternoon. The rain odds increase throughout the day, and the wind does increase to around 10 miles per hour as well. That might give a slight edge to those with the earlier tee times on Friday. I don't think it's a waves situation, but it could be where you maybe bump up the guys who have earlier tee times for Friday. Things pretty calm the rest of the week. So again, I'm not going too crazy with this. I don't think it's a situation where you like necessarily go crazy, but I do think that maybe you bump up guys with earlier tee times Friday. I also realized I forgot to ask you about lower salary golfers with odds to stand out. So let's go back to that. I was like distracted by Brandon Hagee. But which guys with lower salaries have odds to stand out to you?
KH Lee. I mean, I probably would have forgot myself, but KH Lee is 41 to 1 at 9,200. He's the one who stands out below 9,500, but above 9,000. And we have some names at 9,000 or below, and it's all golfers in the upper eights, which is the tier we kind of talked about where it really drops off after that. I would say it drops off at like 93, 94.
Yeah.
Drops off again. And then after that, you're really kind of hoping. But Henrik Norlander, Harry Higgs, both 65 to 1. And then Sebastian Munoz, Garrick Higo, Doug Gim, and Matt Jones, all 80 to 1. And I'm cool with virtually any of the, well, I'm cool with all the guys I listed at 80 to 1. So Munoz, Higo, Gim, and Jones. Don't love any of them specifically to the point where like they're core plays.
Yeah.
But I see the case for a lot of these guys. So, it's not the worst week from that perspective.
We're generally a pro Norlander podcast, but he's not very long. Is that the reason you didn't include him as being a guy you're interested in that range?
It's not enough.
Yeah.
Like there are basically 6 or 7 dice rolls down there. I got to cut off some of them eventually.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so let's move now to our player picks here for the ZOZO Championship. Once again, we're changing things here where we can overlap and both use the same guy, which we will take advantage of in the stud tier. Brandon, who are your 2 favorites for this week at the ZOZO Championship?
Do you want me to do both?
Go ahead. Yeah, let's do it that way.
Okay. Xander and Neiman. For Xander, the Olympic gold medalist, I think is going to give him some popularity bump, but he's also the best golfer in this field, like statistically. No offense to Colin Morikawa with all the wins, but Xander has an edge of about almost half a stroke per round, according to my long-term adjusted recency weighted strokes gain numbers.
You
so
should
about
probably find a better way to like a shorter phrase for that.
I
LT Adjust latte. You figure out a latte, something like that.
I
Log
usually,
adjusted terminal exit velocity. We'll
yeah,
figure it out.
I
Yeah.
usually just call it adjusted strokes gained, but it does wait for recency in there as well. But either way, about a half a stroke better per round than Morikawa over the past year. And look, it's a really weak field. Um, I'm not going to overthink. I might overthink playing Morikawa. I'm not going to overthink playing Xander. And then for Neiman, he's the one guy who stands out to me in the sort of secondary tier from a distance and birdie standpoint. We know the ball striking is good from Neiman. He's long despite being a smaller guy. He's been working on his abs.
Eating
Yeah,
avocados.
yeah. It seems like he's putting on some muscle, which you like to see. 92nd percentile distance over the past 50 rounds, was 33rd here back in 2019. And the putting honestly is not that bad when you adjust for field strength.
Yeah, he's actually up to 12th in strokes gained putting the past 100 rounds based on the numbers of Fantasy National, not adjusted. So, like, you're
Yeah.
not making that adjustment, but like, that's pretty good for this field. Actually, the same two in my top tier. It's Xander and Neiman. I just like the way that Xander is well rounded for this type of event, and there aren't a lot of well rounded guys in this field. Xander's always well rounded, but like, it's harder to find this week than usual. He ranks 11th or better in distance, approach, birdies are better gained in putting. He's played this course back in 2019, finished 10th there. So that's a good bump up for him as well. Morikawa did too, but just noting that for Xander, the form is good. I think he's the safest play in this field, but I say that while not using him because he's safe. I think it's just a good plus. I think I'm here because he can win. He's got good upside. I think that's the reason I want to be here for him. As with Neiman, the distance is good. He's got the distance he need to hang here. He hasn't been as good with his approach play recently, less lights out than usual, but he's actually gained more than one stroke in approach just once in the past 6 measured rounds, but we know long term he's good there. And if that were to snap back in a weaker field, I think that we could see Neiman a really good surge again. So Xander and Neiman for both of us. I would mention Tringali as being a guy I don't mind at 10-8. Anyone else you want to shout out here in the upper range?
Yeah, Tringali stands out. I like Hideki and Zalatoris fine as pivots away, and then Charlie Hoffman.
Okay. Hoffman is down at 10-1, so we're stretching the definition here of studs. But let's move now.
That's our cutoff's 10,000 for the high salaried plays.
I almost put Hoffman in my mid-range plays, so that's why I said it. It was very close.
He could be in that conversation, but I was just thinking I'm not going to probably mention him in the next section, so I mentioned him now.
So who will you mention instead of Charlie Hoffman by blatantly disrespecting Charlie Hoffman?
Charlie Hoffman. Sorry. I saw Neiman, and I figured that was your second play, and so I read the next one, and that was also Joaquin Neiman.
It's like the Spider-Man meme of our picks this week.
Well, we got one more.
Yeah.
Jonathan Vegas at 9,800. Vegas is 7th in my combo model, which is a snappy way to say that the combination of his long-term adjusted form, key stat performance, and hole-by-hole level strokes gained numbers have him 7th in the field. If we're looking for distance, he's got that. If we're looking for birdies, he's got that. First in both over the past 50 rounds. So going back to Vegas, tell me about why we like Jonathan Vegas.
Oh, wow. Same here. He's $9,800, which feels weird given that I was on him last week in the 7,000 range, but also these fields are very different. He's very good. Distance is there. He is making birdies. He ranks 10th in approach. He is 5th in the field in true strokes gained over at data golf for the past 6 months. So your numbers in data golf pretty much aligning there as well. The putting is still not good, but also like he still makes birdies despite that. So I find it hard not to go here. I'd also mention a guy named Charlie Hoffman as being a upper tier mid-range guy who I don't mind this week.
I'm glad you mentioned him.
Yeah, maybe you've heard of him. And I don't mind Ortiz at $9,900 either. I would say I'd rank it Vegas, Hoffman, Ortiz.
Okay, well, we're not done with the mid-range, so.
Well, I'm at the upper mid-range. Like, the two guys we're talking about here are in lower mid range, which I feel like we can also expand there.
Okay, I got you. Hey, it's new. I mean, it's a new format here.
Yep.
Yeah, Hoffman. I would go Hoffman, Vegas, Ortiz in that order among
Yep,
those
that's fine
three.
with me. Who else do you like in the mid range here?
Chris Kirk. I don't think any of these guys stand out to me from the rest, but I have Kirk a little bit higher. He's 12th in my combo model, despite the fact that weights in driving distance, and he's not very good there. But he makes up for it by being in the 68th percentile or better in all four adjusted strokes gain stats. So that includes off the tee because he's more accurate than he is long. Like, again, not the right fit for the course, but a good golfer, and if you adjust his long-term form, just kind of undersalaried from that perspective.
I think that Kirk works. The guy I have above him is Adam Schenk. Schenk, great putter, and he has the ability to have pop weeks with his approach. So I think that is pretty interesting. He also has some distance. Schenk is $9,300. He ranks 15th in distance, 26th in approach, 17th in putting. When you combine those together, it helps him rank 7th in the field in birdies or better gained the past 50 rounds. He gained 4.9 in approach at the Shriners. He also putted out of his mind and finished third despite losing both off the tee and around the green, which could be a concern because we do want guys who are good off the tee. But that's also kind of the reason I like him, is because he can win in multiple ways. He has multiple paths to bailing himself out should things go awry elsewhere. And I think that's pretty fun. So I think he's got some juice here at $9,300. I like Schenk. What are your thoughts on him and anyone else you like in this range?
I think you're just chasing the 22nd here from 2019.
That's the only reason I was on him.
Yeah.
That's actually the only number I have in my sheet is where they finished in 2019. I have no other data here. I made the rest up.
Yeah, so Shank, probably not for me, just because I prefer some other names here, including Kirk. So I'm going to ask if you want a Kirk versus Shank head-to-head.
Love one.
Which would just confirm that Adam Schenk will have more FanDuel points.
That's the only reason I took the bet, was so that I could confirm that he'd win.
Because Jim just demolishes me in the head-to-head bets that we make on the podcast. But I would have Kirk over him. I would have Luke List over him. I would have Matt Wallace over him. And I would have Lonto Griffin over him.
I like Wallace.
Where's Wallace? Where's Wallace for you?
Where's Wallace? Where's Wallace String? I think I'd even consider like a List over Kirk bet. I'm not going to do that one because you already offered me Shank and I prefer Shank. Well, but I like List a decent amount. He's almost dead last in the field in strokes gained putting. Shocker, but hey, it's fine. It's cool.
Well, I said he's one of my guys. I said Chris Kirk is basically just one of the guys in this tier, and I just happened to pick him just because. So I view him and Luke List about the same, so I would not accept that.
Okay. So I'm higher in Adam Schenk than you is what you're saying. Where do you put Wallace compared to...
I'm pretty sure you said you would consider a Luke List versus Chris Kirk bet, which I wouldn't.
Yeah. Where do you sit on Matt Wallace?
Like ranking-wise among these guys?
Compared to List specifically.
A little bit higher on Wallace, just based on what my combo model says. I have List more likely to win, but I also fear for Luke List from a short game standpoint.
Why would you fear for his short game? I'm confused.
Not sure. Well, not short game, but putting specifically. His wedges are fine.
No. Crooked Tooth on YouTube says they need help with their DFS. Lately, it's been ZOZO. Pretty good. Pretty good, Crooked Tooth. Let's move now to the value plays, 9,000 and lower. Let's help Crooked Tooth get those lineups to be more than ZOZO. What are you feeling for this week in the value range?
Well, if you're, I don't know if this is the right range. I'm struggling with this because this is something that I mentioned at the top, where I think after, what was that, like 6 names we talked about, and I would include Adam Schenk. I'm fine with him to the point where I would play him, but
better be.
I think there's a teardrop below those names we just were discussing. So I'm going to mention Doug Gim as a love from guys below 9,000 on FanDuel. But it's just important that we don't get out over our skis with value plays in our lineups, because these guys can very easily just fall way off the map. Gim has a clear path to finishing well. That is because he's very good tee to green for the salary. He's in the 80th percentile in my long-term adjusted strokes gained tee to green numbers over the past year. He's not long though. He's not a good putter. He's a horrible putter. So, like, I could make a better case for Doug Gim than a lot of golfers below 9,000, but I don't really feel like I can plant a flag in any golfer below 9,000 this week, which makes it really scary because we do want Xander, we do want Neiman, so it's going to be kind of limited exposure per lineup to the value plays.
What I think that I want to do is have one guy below 8,000 or below 9,000 in each lineup and do whatever I can with that. If I can use one guy down there and have one guy who does well, like you have Brendan Hagee on your list, $8,000. If I put him in, I can go with a Morikawa or with a Xander Neiman lineup, and that's fine.
Yeah.
If I'm relying on one value play per lineup, my overall exposure level to those plays will naturally be lower. I think that's kind of my thought process for this week.
Yeah. I was considering going with Hagee, who I'll talk about, and Wyndham Clark as well. He's, I think, 7,700 is his salary. Yeah. They can just nuke it, and that's kind of what we're looking for. So I could easily justify saving an extra 800 to 1,000 in salary from this year that we're about to talk about more prominently. However, I do feel that the risk is a lot greater, but there's floor. I mean, there's no floor for any golfer in any field, but I think I'm with you where I will probably wind up heavier on Hagee and Wyndham Clark just because I will have one of them in a lineup. Not every lineup, obviously, but like putting one of those in there in a lineup, it opens up a ton.
Yeah, I think that's probably the right way to play things. My first value golfer is Garrick Higo. His approach play doesn't appear to be a strength right now, but does everything else well enough to be in consideration here. $8,900. He's long off the tee. He ranks 14th in distance past 50 rounds, 17th in putting, 15th in birdies or better gained. The approach is a concern, but like as you mentioned with Gim, like there are a lot of guys here down here who have concerns, and at least Higo can make up for it via other stuff. So I'm still okay with him. I think he's my top guy in the upper 8,000 range, the guy I'm most willing to go to. But he also doesn't really fit that approach of like finding a guy with a lower salary and then plugging in guys at $9,300 or lower. So maybe I should adjust from Higo. Like,
so I've Garrick Higo is one of my others to consider on my primer on numberFire. I think he's like Gim, Sebastian Munoz, Garrick Higo, Matt Jones. Could again kind of flip a coin and just put one of those in a lineup. I view them very similarly. But for Higo, like he gets a boost from distance. The irons aren't great. The wedges aren't great. And at that rate, like, so his long-term adjusted form is not that different than like a Roger Sloan at 8,400.
I was going to talk about Sloan actually. Because I think that Sloan is a guy who I'd be willing to consider. I think that Chesson Hadley is also somebody I'd be willing to consider as like a lower 8,000 type guy who can move the needle a bit more in terms of giving more flexibility.
He's got, I mean, yeah, Hadley's got above average distance. Like Kyle Stanley's a better golfer than the salary indicates, but it's not a good fit for him.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know. I think ultimately what I might end up doing with my lineup core is like I see the case for Higo and Gim and Jones, but the more I look at this, maybe it's just a week where you plug in a Clark, a Hagee, a Hadley, and just take the extra savings because there's not. I mean, and usually if you play DFS week after week, you see a drop off like below 88, 87. It's not really there. It's a little bit higher this week, so might as well save some salary. So I think talking through that got me higher on Hagee and Clark specifically.
talk to me about Haggy, and we'll go from there.
So the case that I'm kind of laying out for Hagee and Clark is that if you're going for a lower salaried play, you might as well go for someone who has a path to really picking up strokes off the tee with distance, because that's something that's like the key way, the most obvious way for golfers to separate this week based on what we've seen in 2019. And sure, it could happen where, distance doesn't matter as much as it did in 2019, or that these guys just struggle everywhere else. But the thing is, every golfer below 9,000 struggles with something. Might as well take the guys who can gain distance for short, because distance doesn't go away week to week. It's pretty stable. Strokes gained off the tee is the most stable stat of the four. So for me, I'm kind of looking for those guys as my key value options. Hagee's 99th percentile in distance gained, dead last in fairways gained over the past 50 rounds, according to Fantasy National. Bad irons, but again, it's just kind of my thought process with a lot of unknowns, just going for selling out for distance for some of these guys.
Yeah. So let's talk about Hadley for a second here. Not a big distance guy, but he's 30th in distance. He's not bad there. Not bad in his approach play, but a really good putter. And that could allow him to make some birdies here, I think, just because the field is not great by any means. Chesson Hadley, $8,000. Not opposed to going there. I don't mind Hagee either, just because, like you said, the distance works. Even though the approach is bad, he can still make birdies because the distance is good. Not a bad putter. I think that adds up. I prefer Hagee over Clark personally by a pretty decent margin. I would say Roger Sloan is 84. I think that's low enough where he's at least consideration for this type of build. Not the longest guy at the tee, but he can make some birdies as well. And then the other one I would say a little bit higher, but if you wind up in this range, I do like Pat Perez. He withdrew 2 weeks ago. He had a foot injury. He was on the 18th hole for a second round. He actually was really good the first round. On the 18th hole, put it in the water and just withdrew. I think he was just done. I'm getting out of here. It's almost dark and stuff like that. I don't know how much of a concern that foot is. So if you wind up at 86, I do like Perez. But again, I think the better way to build is to go one lower salary guy who has a path to doing something, and then doing the rest from there. Do want to ask you, Wesley Bryan, coming off a wrist injury, he has not played since June-ish, I don't think. Maybe it's been a long time. It's his first event off of a wrist injury. Any interest in him at $7,400, given we have no idea what he looks like right now?
Pretty sure I've seen him playing some golf on Instagram. He and his brother have an account. That's pretty good, if I'm not mistaken there. I usually am not that tuned in when I'm scrolling through some Instagram, which is pretty rare, but I feel like if you're coming back, you're ready. I could see the case for that. Tyler McCumber's also minimum salary at $7,000.
Okay.
He is in the 95th percentile in driving distance. Red flags elsewhere, but again, if you're selling out for distance and just taking that approach, plug in McCumber, see what happens. Again, I would say one of these guys, not multiple, because the odds that both of them hit are very, very small.
Let's say you each pick one guy as your value play. You plug in. Who are you going with if you have one?
Probably Hagee.
Okay.
If I need to go below 8,000, I think it would probably at this point just be McCumber, because it's fully minimum salary.
Yeah. I might do Chesson. Could go badly because he's not long, but
badly for Hadley.
Yeah. Oh well, had a good run. I think I might go Chesson a bit over those guys, but I understand. I think the Hagee is definitely number 2 for me. So I think that's the way to build for this week: is find a guy you can tolerate who is lower and gives you flexibility. Hope to make the cut. I'd be okay differentiating down there just to not tie yourself too heavily to those guys.
Yeah, that's the thing
across lineups. But
yeah,
find guys you think have a path to some upside. Find guys you can see finishing well in that range. Plug them in. Go nuts at the top, and then see where you are there. Again, not total punts. They need to be guys with a path, but I think that's the right roster construction for this week. Let's finish up with our win picks here for the ZOZO based on the odds over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Brandon, who do you have your eye on for this week from that perspective?
You won the we can overlap here, but it's going to be for sure. Joaquin Neiman is one of them.
Okay, Joaquin Neiman is 20-1 over at FanDuel Sportsbook. You've got him. Might be dumb, but I kind of want to go Jonathan Vegas at 33-1. I'm going to take him.
You're just going to make me spell Jonathan.
You could say Johnny. I always wrote Johnny on the rundown because I don't want to figure out. I always think there's two N's in the beginning, and that always trips me up.
And I just typed it with two N's. I cannot commit it to memory. I don't, no matter how many times I've typed it in my life.
Who do you want for your other one?
Tim Tringali.
I like it. I was considering that too. I think that Tringali is a good pick. Tringali right now 35-1 at FanDuel Sportsbook. So your picks are Neiman at 20-1 and Tringali at 35-1. I will go with Johnny Vegas at 33-1. And
there's another name I was considering around there.
Charlie Hoffman lengthened to 40-1. Kind of okay with that. I'll take him at 40.
He's 41.
41-1. I'll take Hoffman there. Who was the other guy you were considering?
Hoffman.
Okay, cool. I like that. So because we can't quite get to Xander and Morikawa this week, I'll end up jumping down a bit. I think that if you assume they don't win, it's more of a wide open event. So I'm okay like taking some longer shots than I usually take on those guys.
Yeah, so I run a win simulation model and it shows Xander, Morikawa way overvalued, Xander overvalued, Hideki overvalued. And if you have three overvalued favorites, like pretty significantly, a lot of golfers look like they have positive expected value. So it's a week where I'm living in that 20 to 30 to 40 range with my bets.
I think that's probably the right way to play things here. So we have good plans of attack, I think, for both DFS and for betting for this week. So let's send people off to fill out their lineups. That is all that we have here for today on the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, but a lot of good stuff here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed because the NBA is back and Tom Vecchio has you covered every weekday with the Daily ISO, of course, for the NHL players as well. The Daily Deke is up every weekday also. So NHL, NBA covered both here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Of course, the NFL Week 6 recap podcast is posted yesterday morning, breaking down big takeaways from this past week of DFS, talking about some under-salary guys for week number 7, because we will need them to stack Chiefs Titans. So talking about that there. Week 7 preview goes up on Thursday, 10 a.m. on the FanDuel YouTube page and up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed after that. So make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, leave us a rating and review as well. Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter, where can they find you there?
I'm at Godola13, GDULA13.
And I am at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcasts. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your DFS lineups. We'll talk to you once again next week. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire.